Okay, think about the person that you feel the safest with. Now imagine you're looking at a picture of them. And just looking at that picture is reducing your pain. That sounds ridiculous. But they did do an experiment that proved this is what really happens. They took women and gave them a painful heat stimulus, and then they had them either hold the hand of their partner, look at a picture of them, or hold the hand of a stranger. And something really interesting happened. When they held the hand of their partner, their pain went down. But also, when they just looked at a picture of their partner, it did the same thing, sometimes even more than holding their hand. But interestingly, when they held the hand of the stranger, their pain actually went up. So this tells us something very interesting about our brain and pain. Our brain's not always trying to find the meaning in the pain. A lot of times it's just trying to ask, am I safe? And is there someone in it with me?
You're listening to The Overprotective Brain, the companion podcast to the book by Dr. Sam Tyriver and Hayley DiMarco. Before we begin, a quick note. The content on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. If you are dealing with pain, injury, or any other health condition, please consult a qualified professional. Nothing you hear on this show should replace that conversation. Now here's Hayley and Dr. Sam.
Hi, I'm Hayley DiMarco, and I'm here with Dr. Sam, and we're talking about our book, The Overprotective Brain. Sam is a PT, and he's kind of in a really interesting, if not just strange area of physical therapy, really, because it's something that's unusual that there's not a lot of PTs, I think, yet practicing the way you do. And that is that they're combining physical therapy with psychology and brain-body connection and neuroscience. So it's a very interesting intersection that I think is really speaking a lot to pain, which is why we wrote the book, The Overprotective Brain. And every episode, we're talking about your overprotective pain and how we can help you lessen it and then just live a better life. So last episode, we talked about laughter. And there was something that I think I mentioned that I want to hit again that was really interesting. That laughter is very good for your body. We know that. And laughter can produce these chemicals inside your body, which we call your inner pharmacy, and just simply by laughing. But also, we found out that if you laugh with somebody, it's a better benefit to your body than when you laugh alone. So that's an interesting dichotomy, an interesting question to ask ourselves. Why is it better in connection with someone else than when we're just laughing alone? Now, before I let you talk about that, I do want to talk a little bit about the overprotected brain. What we're talking about is really another term for chronic pain. We're saying pain that's lasted for a long time, pain that maybe you don't have a reason for why it is, or you do know what it is, but it's just been going on so long and you want an answer to it. And what we've been doing in these last few episodes is talking about that inside of us exists an inner pharmacy. We have within us drugs, really, that we can produce that can alleviate our pain, that can help us with anxiety, with depression. And so far we've talked about, we've talked about laughter. We've talked about, what was the other one we did? Movement. And today we're talking about social connection. So the question that I really want to ask is, why does social connection trigger the production of the drugs that we need to help our pain, even our anxiety?
I want to go back to something you said a little earlier before I'll answer that question, okay. But you use some words that are really, really good. And I think they're so common when people talk about pain. We talk about chronic pain. We talk about, is this place coming from something real? And it's like if we don't have a tissue issue or a cut or a scrape or a bruise, then we write it off as not real. And the fact that our brains can create pain with something that isn't wrong, there's always something wrong. There's always a reason for that pain. And your brain can create all these amazing drugs and chemicals simply by thought, simply by looking at something. And this, I think, is something that most people have experienced this in your life. If you're hungry and you think about a piece of a cheesecake or something that you really like, what does your mouth start to do?
Water.
Yeah, you start to drool. You create spit. That is a very real, tangible, objective measure of something all you did was think about. Mm-hmm. And so it got me thinking, well, can that work for other things? Endorphin, serotonin, oxytocin. Can just thinking about something stimulate endorphin, serotonin, and all these wonderful chemicals in our brain? Mm-hmm. And so, of course, you go to the research, and it is true. And studies like the one you just mentioned prove it, that our brains, nothing physical has to happen to us for our brains to start creating these compounds and these chemicals in our brain. And so I call it positive social interaction. You can choose any word you want for it, but that's my sort of umbrella term for we need interaction with other human beings. We need interaction with other creatures. And when you do, your brain becomes healthier. It starts secreting these different chemicals. It gives you a will to live. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you this feeling of being needed. And a lot of times we hold those two things, positive social interaction. What does that possibly have to do with my pain? Well, as we discuss in the book, there's a very clear connection to that.
Yeah.
And so now I've gone, what was the question again? I went off on a tangent. That happens a lot.
Well, I was asking how does positive social connection trigger the drugs that we're talking about?
So positive social interaction, when you interact with other people, dogs is another great thing that we can interact with. It's not a substitute for human beings, but it can also release a chemical called oxytocin in your brain. That's your sort of social interaction chemical. It's a healthy chemical. You need it to feel good. I lump it in with the feel-good chemicals, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. We need those to reduce pain, to reduce stress, to stimulate vagal tone, which gives us the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system. So when you interact with other people, you get that release in chemicals.
Yeah, but it's kind of a catch-22. Because when you're feeling this overprotective pain, when you're really struggling and your world is kind of, well, you're safest on your couch, it becomes very hard to reach out and to have these social interactions. That's asking a lot to tell someone, well, you feel awful. You know that if you leave the house, you're even going to be more exhausted when you get back. And so it's a challenge to tell someone who's struggling with pain, you should get out there and be more social.
Yes. And you transitioned that beautifully, Hayley. That is always the question I get. Sam, I'm a loner. I don't like other people. I don't like being around other people. We have a word for that. It's called social anxiety. That's pathologic, not being able to be around other people or having anxiety for being around other people. That's not normal and healthy neurosystem function. We've got to figure out a way to overcome that and get through it. I mean, that's why therapists exist. That's why physical therapists, occupational therapists exist, is to help people overcome that so that they can participate in that positive social interaction. Because if they don't, then you have this negative downward spiral.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because I'm an introvert. That's my nature, to be introverted, and people exhaust me. But knowing what we talked about our inner pharmacy, I tell myself, okay, I've got to have some positive social interaction. And then my brain goes, oh, I'm so tired. And then I have to talk to them, and then I have to listen to them. And it takes a lot out of me. But one thing I've realized is that I see the difference between when I have a shallow conversation with somebody or I have a deeper conversation. For me, my pathology is that I like deep conversations. So when I'm with people and the conversation is kind of shallow, how was your day? How was your family? Just kind of mundane, run-of-the-mill things. It exhausts me. I hate to say that. I sound like I'm cruel, but if you'll talk to me about, the inner workings of your brain or something about theology, something that's deep and political, I can get a lot of energy from it. So I think it's important that we know about our bodies as far as where we can get this, what kind of people or what kind of interactions.
Yes. When I say positive social interaction or social interaction, it's one term, and it's a very complex issue because it goes back to the emotional parts of our brain, our limbic system, and these are not simple areas of the brain. They touch all different parts of our brain. So the inner workings of positive social interaction is really very complex, and it varies from person to person. So some people might need more, some people might need less. There are introverts, extroverts. There's all these different factors that are variable in how much do people need, what kind do people need. But if you look at sociology and you look at researchers that study the people on the planet that live the longest, happiest, healthiest, highest quality of lives, there's some things that they have in common. They do have positive social interaction. They've got a robust social network of not just friends, but also family. They have people that look out for them when they're old. They have people that take care of them when they're young. They take care of other people, not just family, but also they've got robust social groups as well. In certain cultures, in certain countries, certainly in America these days, that can be really, really challenging with social media and all these things that can sort of hinder our ability to interact with other people. But it's important. And the ability to overcome those obstacles to achieving that is something that I enjoy helping people with. But sometimes people need that external help. They might need a therapist or a counselor to help them. I
think that the problem with overprotective pain, especially as we see it here in our country, is that pain isolates you. And so when you're in isolation, your body stops sending you safety signals. There's this sense of me against the world. Now, oxytocin gives you those safety signals. It makes you feel, oh, I'm safe. And that's the power of community, is you feel like you're safe. And it's kind of, I've had counselors say, my job is to share my calm with you. So when you're with another person and they're not resonating at the same pain level that you are, there's a sense of you're getting some of their calm. Your body's recognizing, I'm in this with somebody else, right? I'm not an isolated being. And so I think a lot of us treat, especially introverts, but a lot of us in pain treat social connection like it's dessert. Like it's just, well, I don't really need it. It's what you add after you've had your meal. But it's really more like a vitamin. And you don't take vitamins when you're dying. You take vitamins because, well, they make your daily life better. They make you feel stronger or better. Mm-hmm. So I do think if we could stop thinking about social connection like, well, it's just my life doesn't need that icing on top, to literally make it dessert. It doesn't need that. We actually do need it, like we need our vitamins.
I love your analogy of vitamins. I think it's fantastic. I use a different analogy. I call it brushing your teeth. These are brushing your teeth things. The 6 keys to the inner pharmacy they're like brushing your teeth. You don't brush your teeth to make your teeth stronger, faster, sharper. You don't take your vitamins, unless you're an elite athlete or something. You just take them to be healthy and to stave off the bad. And that's why you brush your teeth. And I think getting positive social interaction is one of those things. It's like brushing your teeth. It's like taking your vitamins. You need it on a daily basis to stave off the bad. And it can quickly become a very negative snowball, just like not brushing your teeth. Or flossing. That's an even better example.
That's better,
you don't floss, and then you floss and it hurts and it bleeds and it's gross and yuck. And so you don't floss more and it just makes it worse. I have a colleague that I work with, and I'm pivoting the conversation a little bit, but when you're like, I just wish that I could share my calm with people. Mm-hmm. And we were having the very important discussion of, if you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be? And she said, and I've never heard anyone say this before, she said that I wish that I could share my emotion with someone. So if someone's having a really bad day, I could immediately make them feel, happy or joyous. And I was like, wow, as a therapist, that would be an amazing superpower to have. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be my go-to superpower now. But yes, but that's what happens with positive social interaction, is when you grieve in a group. When you celebrate in a group, and you share that like-minded emotion or that hive-mind emotion in a positive way.
I think in order for people that are stuck in chronic pain, stuck in overprotective mode, in order for them to grasp this, they need to understand something very fundamental to our book. And that is kind of the order of how you do things. Because if you say, I don't feel like it, you literally are not going to feel like getting off that couch. Potentially for years, once you get to the pain being bad enough, where you're not even going to leave the house, you're going to get off the couch because you don't feel like it. And so we talk about there's a different order of things, of how you do things. You want to talk about that?
Of course, I do. It's my go-to. You have to look at it like this. If you have helpful pain of the think, feel, do triangle, the feel has to get better first. If I have the flu, my body is giving me symptoms that there's an infection or something wrong. I have to feel better before I can go to work. If I break my foot, I have to feel better before I can go running again. Okay, with overprotective pain, if you wait to feel better, you're going to keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and then years are going to go by. And this, I tell every patient, this is the sucky part. With overprotective pain, you have to do better first. If you have social anxiety, if you have all these things, you live in this fear. Well, if I go out and I talk to this person, what if they insult me? What if they make fun of me? What if all these, you get that catastrophization cycle. You have to break that, and you have to do, and that is very hard for people to do. But they have to live in the do. The do has to get better first. And in fact, the worst part is that sometimes then the feel is the last thing to get better. You do it, so you think, I did that, I can do it again. So you do it again, and you think you can do it again. Mm-hmm. And when am I going to feel better, Sam? Well, it will come. I promise it will come, but the do has to change first. And it's very hard for people.
It is very hard. You have to look at it and go, I'm doing this so that I can feel that. Instead of, I'm going to feel this so later I can do that. It's just a backwards way of thinking.
And it takes a tremendous amount of trust. I'm telling someone, you have to go exercise. No, you have to go to that party. You have to go to that concert. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what are you on, man? Like, it's very hard, and it's very hard for people to do it. And so I have tremendous respect for people that take that leap of faith. They go do it, and it goes good. Positive things come of it. Mm-hmm.
And that's where the overprotective brain loses its power, where it becomes less overprotective, is experience, right? Mm-hmm. That's the thing that I want to harp on more than anything, is that after you do it and your brain goes, oh, that wasn't so bad, or that was actually good, then it's learned something that takes away a little bit of its overprotection, right? It goes, okay, maybe I can handle this. Maybe I can do the next thing and the next thing. But it's not as easy as popping a pill out of your orange bottle.
Oh, it's so much easier to do that, right? That's why pharmaceutical companies exist.
But where's that getting you?
Yep.
I mean, you're just popping the same pill, feeling the same way, and we're talking about expanding your life. We're talking about alleviating the pain, yes, but also expanding your life. Because I know when you're a kid, you think, I'm going to do this and that, I'm going to travel, I'm going to go all these places and live this life. Is that what you're doing now? When you're overprotective pain? Have you arrived where you're, I'm just doing everything I wanted to do? Or has your world just shrunk? And are you just going to let it be that way? Or are you going to say, no, I'm going to do this hard thing? And we'll talk about this in another episode. It's not the hardest. We're not going to ask you to run a marathon. We're saying do one little thing just so your brain can learn. So let me actually then ask you what you think is a good prescription if you were going to be Dr. Sam now and give him a prescription for social connection.
It's the same as every other one of the 6 key pharmacies. You got to write it into your day. You got to make yourself do it. We say, you got to exercise. You got to go out of your way to exercise. You got to either go to the gym or do this thing. We've talked about laughter. We say, you got to write that into your day. You got to seek out something to make you laugh. Positive social interaction, you got to seek it out. You've got to do something in your day to seek out social interaction. What that is and where that might be can vary from individual to individual, but you've got to prescribe it. You work with a therapist or somebody you know. Maybe you join the rec club. Maybe you go to the fitness class. Maybe you just go to the work party or something. But you have to seek it out. You can't just wait for it to happen because just like waiting to feel better, then years are going to go by and we're in the same place.
Yeah. A lot of times, this might seem really weird, but girls will talk about getting their cycles kind of synced when they spend a lot of time together.
Okay.
And there's some truth to that. And I think there's some nervous system truth to that because when you spend time with other people, their nervous system influences yours, right? And so you start to feel, you can feel like, well, I'm understood. Somebody understands me, which you're not alone. And someone believes you. And I think that's the hardest part for some people with overprotective pain. The doctors might not believe them. That because we can't find anything wrong, but you find people maybe in support groups who understand. I know it really hurts.
Such a tricky question because you want to find people that can validate you, that can say, yes, that really sucks. We're going to do this anyway, and I know why we're going to do it anyway. But sometimes being around people that share, like a fibromyalgia support group or anxiety can sometimes feed off the symptoms. When I worked in the intensive program through Children's and Rogers, these kids were in these groups together and they were all struggling with the same things, but they weren't allowed to talk about those things. They were allowed to talk about what they did over the weekend, their favorite TV shows, their comic books, their sports, their clubs, all these stuff. They weren't allowed to ruminate over their symptoms. If you can get groups of people like that, that is the best prescription, is find the groups of people that aren't going to focus on your diet. Your diagnosis isn't who you are. Your pain isn't who you are. Who you are is what you do, how you think, the things you feel, what you say. Finding people that focus on those and bring out those, that's the best thing you can do.
I love that. And I'm glad you said that because one of the things that I preach a lot is that the opposite of joy is complaint. You can't have those at the same time. You want to be joyful? Then don't be complaining. Now, I hate to say people, stop complaining because I know the pain is real. But like you said, if you're in groups where you're just sitting around complaining about everything, there's not going to be any joy. There's nothing that's going to rise to healing level. Right. You're just going to keep sinking lower and lower. So I think that's very important. Okay, so we'll talk more about this, and I think that's a little something for people to chew on. And hopefully today you will think about calling a friend. You'll think about texting. Let's start with that. How about that? And you'll really understand the value of social connection. So
Hayley,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Before we go, I got to talk about dogs.
Oh, please.
So if you ever want an excuse to get a puppy, now's the time. So humans interact with dogs. They're the most studied. Dogs have the highest amount of oxytocin released. So if you need that oxytocin burst and you're looking for an excuse to get a dog, go adopt a puppy.
I love that idea. And it's true. My dog sits on my lap and my nerves, my blood pressure, everything just goes, it feels so much better with my dog. That's why I have 3 of them.
It doesn't substitute for a person, but it can be a great quick
fix. But it's a fantastic way to do it. And that's why our dogs are here right now, as you can see. How many are here?
See?
Well, she's as calm as can be. See, share your calm with me, Rosie. Okay, is that enough? Are you good?
I'm good. Yeah,
okay, great. Well, if you would like more about the Overprotective Brain, you can look for it where books are sold. The Overprotective Brain by Hayley DiMarco and Dr. Sam. So we look forward to talking to you next episode. In the meantime, go call someone.
Thanks for listening to the Overprotective Brain. If today's conversation helped something click and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a review wherever you listen. The book, The Overprotective Brain, is available on Amazon, and you can find our socials over at overprotectivebrain.com. We'll see you next time.